Cheers.
There we go.
Tim,
Ben,
good to see you.
good to see you as well, man.
How are you doing, Tim?
I am doing well as anybody can do in this whole pandemic fiasco.
Well, we are on a certain part of it now. It's a different part with you being, vaccinated, and I am too.
Right.
We're in a different place, but it's gotten better, I think, because of that. And the weather, the season,
Yeah.
in our fields, end of a school year kind of brings a feeling to you where you're like, there's a new thing coming.
Right.
Summertime. So,
Yeah.
what's it been like for high school? High school students. For those who don't know, you teach high school English. So.
Yeah. So I teach high school at Argo, and at the beginning of the year, we just had everybody pretty much remote. And so everything was remote. We were even teaching from our homes, and basically the school was locked out of anybody. And during that time, it was okay, teaching remotely, trying to get the information across to kids, but it's clearly so difficult, because this whole pandemic thing really made it obvious how much kids need to be away from their own home and be in the company of their peers and just doing the things that they enjoy doing, but also getting some one-on-one instruction from teachers, and just having to do things through Zoom calls or remind text and using things like Canvas and OneNote. These are nice tools and all, but man, it's no substitute for just sitting next to a kid and looking them in the eyes and saying, you need to do this way, or this is how you fix this, or whatever. That's been one of the biggest adjustments for me, at least.
Mm-hmm. That's a hard place to be. I relate differently. It's not as many hours as you as far as an interaction with Zoom, but I teach as well, and I get the whole Zoom thing just doesn't work. Like you said, it's a great tool.
Yeah,
it works really well when you need it to, say, just for certain things, maybe a meeting or something. Even then, it's nice to have meetings in person, but
right.
Just little things, it helps. It's nice to have that as an outlet, but to teach full classes for a whole semester, a whole year,
right?
The kids are losing a lot of it. You are too. Like, you're at the a part of your career where you might not need as much practice, but like someone like me at the beginning of teaching, it's nice to have that practice, to be in class and learn the do's and don'ts and honing in on your abilities and how to be a better instructor. So to have that removed, it's been really difficult. This is my third year, so it's been difficult dealing with that.
Well, first semester we had at least one student teacher in our department, and this semester we have at least one. There might be a second one, but I can't imagine student teaching in this situation. Where it's so important that you actually work with kids in the same room and have to explain things, and even dealing with discipline. The discipline issues are completely different with Zoom at the high school level compared to in a regular school year. In a regular school year, one of the first things I noticed actually at the start of this school year is just how easy it is for me to get information across to students, because you don't have kids in a classroom kind of feeding off of each other for being goofy. Mm-hmm. That would happen, in any class, regardless of the year, regardless of the ability level. There's always going to be a little bit of something going on in the classroom, and like I say, they're feeding off of each other. But with Zoom, everybody's just looking at a computer, so you don't really have that. So now the discipline issues become something more like kids will always fix the camera up at the ceiling, right? Or they'll just keep the camera off entirely, or they'll enter class, fix it on the corner, and then they go off and they're playing, Call of Duty or whatever in the next room. So there's always those little workarounds that they find, and
there's not much you could do about it.
No.
I know we were told you can't recommend or you can't require the video to be on, just for a lot of different reasons.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know how it was with you, but that's what we were told. So,
Yeah.
It's been a weird one. I'm glad to be on the back nine of it, and I hope things can resume to some sense of normalcy by August, especially for education. Yep. For college too, it's hard because it's a lot of money and it's a lot of time, and it's something they're choosing to do. It's not recommended or required by the state,
Right.
So to kind of, throw a freshman college student into an online only experience when they were paying for the full, in-person dorms, all those things.
Yeah.
The in-between stuff, the parties, the study, the study groups, everything that comes along with going to college.
Right.
And high school, too. I mean, say what you will. You're the educator in high school, but it's fun to be goofy in class. And to have the camaraderie, to make friends, to have those memories.
Right.
That's what I think about.
Right. And as a teacher who, when I first started teaching, I remember my threshold for, tomfoolery was pretty low. And then as the years go on, and especially once you have your own kids, and you start seeing what they're like at home and what works and what doesn't work at home, you suddenly get a little bit of an appreciation for just laying back on certain things because kids are just going to be kids. I mean, we've all been 16 and goofy or hormony or whatever. So this, it's been a little bit of an adjustment, but it would be nice to just get back to something a little bit normal. So I'm looking forward to that in the fall. It should be. I'm hoping it'll be.
I think it will be.
We may have to wear face masks, but
something's going to happen. Enough's enough as far as the psychological part of it. I think everyone's like, we need to just, if it's face mask, social distance, we're not touching each other anymore, whatever it takes. Let's get back to something in person.
One thing that's been kind of cool, though, is the number of students that I've seen this year who really thrive in this whole situation with Zoom classes and online classes, because you have some kids who maybe they didn't really have the opportunity to show this, but now it's like you give them some assignments to do, and they're just kind of like, give me the time to do it. Let me know when it's due. I will get it done perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
And some kids are just really digging that. And I know if I had been a high school student during all of this, I probably would have been more along those lines. I would have been like, don't make me sit through lectures or goofy group work and all that stuff. Just tell me what I got to do. I will make sure it's done, and just kind of leave it at that.
So it works well for some kids, but not everybody.
For some kids, but certainly not everybody. And I can't imagine. I mean, I love my family and all, but if I was in there 24/7 around these people constantly, I mean, I'd be going nuts. And so I can't imagine what some of the kids are going through around really, crowded households or goofy families and dysfunctional situations. It's got to be terrible. And I feel bad for those kids.
Sometimes it's a scapegoat. Like they get to go to high school. They get to get away from.
Yeah.
The house could be nice, but maybe they just want to be away from it. Like parents, siblings, I don't know, just changes it up. It's a whole process. It takes up 6, 7, 8 hours of your day.
Right.
It's nice to have that. It's what makes kids like summertime so much, to like contrast that, then go back. Everyone loves going back to school in the fall. It's like part of it,
Yeah.
How did we come to be friends? Because you were never my English teacher, and I always forget how we ended up just kind of talking over the years.
That's a great question. So I know I've told you this before, but I remember you. I think it must have been your senior year, because I remember you had Dr. Hickman for your English teacher, and her classroom's right across from mine. And so I would always stand outside my classroom door during passing periods. And I remember you had the head of hair. I think you may have had the mustache at the time.
I had a beard.
You had the beard.
It wasn't as full.
Okay,
but
you had that. And I remember you had like this, almost like a Where's Waldo striped shirt. And you would walk out of her room and you'd look at me like you've known me your whole life. Hey, and you just kind of give me a wave, and I'd be like, hey, and then that was it. And you would just walk past, and every day it was like that, just saying hey. And that was, I didn't even know your name. I just knew that was the dude who comes out of Hickman's class. And then somewhere around,
that's funny,
maybe 2014 or 2015, through Facebook, I think you may have contacted me because I was part of the faculty band. And I think you were just starting to do some of the recording downstairs. And you wanted to know if the faculty band would be interested in recording a song for you. But we weren't nearly as polished, and we didn't have our act together to be able to do that. And so I remember saying, maybe next year. But at that point, that's when you invited me to that DZ Fest, maybe in 2015.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started, seeing what you're doing over here, and I was smitten with it. I think it's pretty cool scene that you got going here. So ever since then, I've been a hanger on.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and yeah, you've come to like all the DZ Fest since then, and
Yeah, it's a
some
good
shows,
time.
intimate evenings. You've made posters, you've sold artwork. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you brought artwork. Can we talk about these real quick? If you
Yeah.
want to talk about each piece?
Yeah. So the smaller one over here, I think I entitled it Mesmeria. And it was just kind of a change in some of the in my approach to doing an abstract portrait. The way I would normally do a portrait is put up even if it's abstract, I would kind of begin with a pencil outline and then just kind of take it from there. And this time I started with pen, put it in marker, made basic outlines. And then over a course of a couple of nights, I just started applying the paint, the acrylic to it, just kind of getting in my little swirls and colors and things that I do with my art. And so I just wanted to create an abstract face.
It's really nice. That's
Thanks.
really great up close. I know it's not as easy to see on camera, and you obviously can't see it with the audio, but it's really beautiful. Really nice detail.
Thanks. I like eyes. Something about eyes. I kind of dig. And then the middle one is the Queen of Instagram. I just kind of use that pose that many of the people on social media do, where they're taking a selfie, and so they have that little, I forget what that thing is that's called on the back of your phone, where you kind of put your finger in there, and so you're kind of placing that, but then just adding some colors, a little bit of psychedelic color to the whole thing, and trying to establish a contrast between something kind of realistic with something obviously abstract, but then black and white versus color, and just kind of working with some opposites.
Something
In that one.
something straightforward, simple, and ordinary with something a little chaotic, abstract. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I
so
like that.
my wife likes that one. And then this last one over here is an oil painting. Appropriately, I call this one Girl with a Blue Eye. And it's just a portrait of a girl that I try to do in softer, like black, white, gray tones, but with a blue foundation to it. So you have blue background, blue with the eye, blue kind of worked into the rest of it, but just something in blue.
Another great painting. You're a talented artist. You know that?
Thank you.
How long you been making art for?
I first started, I'm told, when I was about in first grade, maybe even a little bit younger than that. My parents told me that I used to sit on the living room floor by a little coffee table, and I would just sit there watching the Flintstones on TV. And one day I went up to one of my parents and I said, could I have a piece of paper and a pencil? So they gave it to me, and I sat down, and as I was watching the Flintstones, I drew Fred Flintstone. And they were like, oh, that's really good. And I thought, this is kind of easy. And so I just started drawing Flintstone characters and eventually going on to like Scooby-Doo and that type of stuff. And eventually I just started taking art classes in high school and college. It was always just kind of a fun hobby for me.
Why not ever go further with it instead of going the path you chose with an English educator? Since you've been doing it for so long.
I guess I liked the idea of this being something that I could just kind of lose myself in and keep it as one of those things that's just pure hobby, pure fun. It's more of an identity type of thing for me there, separate from, all the different hats we have to wear, right? You got to be a you got to wear your teacher hat, your husband hat, your father. You got to wear all these other hats, but the artist hat for me is one that's just kind of off on the side, and I just kind of do that for my own enjoyment and
That's great, though.
sanity. I
That's a
guess.
great hobby. Great form of expression, and you've clearly honed in. I mean, about, 50 or so years you've been doing something like this?
Yeah. I'm 55, so probably about a good 50 years that I've been that art has been part of my life. Now, I didn't do a lot of art for like a long time, and actually, this is kind of interesting. I suppose to me, maybe not to you folks, but to me, when I was 19, and I had failed out of Lewis University my first semester, And so then I transferred to St. Xavier, and I had my first semester success over there. Something about an art class that I took that semester at St. Xavier turned me on to the idea of keeping a journal. And so the August of 1985, right when I was starting my sophomore year of college, I started keeping a journal, just a regular notebook. And I've kept that journal for 34, 35 years, whatever. Always different notebooks. I mean, I have a stack of notebooks at home that's enormous, just keeping, from all the years. And in the process of doing all of that, I guess I detail things about like when I first got married and when I started my career. And right now, as I'm rereading parts of it, right around 89, 90, when I first started teaching, I could see that I had just a lot of creativity that was kind of simmering, but I couldn't do anything with it because I had to worry about this career, right? I had to finish up college. I had to get a job. I had to start designing lessons and all this stuff. And so I guess a lot of my creativity or that creative impulse got sort of sublimated, I guess, into lesson plans, teaching. When I first started at Argo, I was coaching football and baseball, so trying to do things with teams, okay, and eventually like Scholastic Bowl, just always trying to do something relatively creative with these. And it wasn't until, I don't know, maybe about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, that I started getting into art all over again.
So when I first contacted you.
Yeah, so right around the time that we started contacting, you asked me, and actually you kind of lit the fire for me because you asked me that one year if I could design a poster for one of the DZ intimate evenings.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I could do that. And so I just had a blast. I think I told you, give me a few months to do this. I think I knocked it out in a couple of weeks because I was just so into it. And it was so much fun to finally get back into holding some materials and creating something and just being goofy with it. That kind of lit the fire for me, and I started getting back into art. So it's been a nice, 4 or 5 years, and I'm thinking, in a few more years when I retire, there's my hobby right there. It's just waiting for me.
I could totally see it. And honestly, I could see you like selling artwork, like getting commissions, to be honest, through Instagram or Etsy or your own website. I could see that definitely. Doing freelance work for fun, for free, for money, whatever works. I mean, you're retired, you kind of can choose that path easily.
Creativity is fun.
It really is.
This enterprise right here is your creativity right here, and this is, another way to kind of get ideas out to the masses in some way. What led you to start this?
This podcast?
Yeah.
People like you, people that I've met over the last, 11 years of DZ Records, 10 years of DZ Fest, and 16 years of hanging out in a clubhouse called the DZ. That kind of sparked all this. And I met a lot of people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people over the years, from bands to artists to friends to family to acquaintances, highs and lows, just every type of person. I found out how fascinating everyone really is and how much everyone really wants the same thing. And we're a lot more similar than we think. More similarities than differences. And I wanted the world and other people to hear those things and hear the different paths people have, chosen, the good, the bad, and the ugly, creative things, comics, actors, scientists, people who can inform others, people I found interesting. Maybe they're amazing and talented, but, the world hasn't given them a chance, and I'm trying to. I've always been one to try to facilitate potential and creativity. From the fest to recording to shows to a podcast to albums, my own, music, things like that. So, yeah. But I think it just took a while. It took like many years to look back and be like, you know what? To know the right people to have on and to reach out to people, to have people, take me seriously enough to be like, yeah, I'll come on your show, things like that. And having the right gear, the know-how, and more of a foundation to just try something without any no sponsors, no income from this, just doing it for fun and a passion project.
That's an interesting point. At what point in the development of everything DZ did you notice that people are starting to take this seriously? I'm no longer X, whatever you felt that your initial incarnation was, and now I'm viewed seriously as musician or promoter, or all the different hats that you have to wear. So, like, at what point did you notice that?
Well, it depends, because some people said good things and took it seriously at an earlier time, depending on who they were. Usually, it was younger people. Adults took a lot longer. Parents and family took very long. That probably took until I started teaching in college for them to be like, oh, okay, I guess this is something more than we thought. I'd say around 2017, 18 is when a lot of people started being more like polite about it and not seeing it as some weird hippy-dippy, thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard. It's usually people who haven't been to something like DZ Fest or an intimate evening that have more negative things to say, and then if you have been, people don't talk like that anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's been a long journey, and many different iterations of things happening, good, bad, everything. But I don't know what it is.
Well, I'll tell you what, the news of the day is that DZ Fest is going on this year in September. What are the dates again?
September 25th and 26th.
Oh,
yeah.
I got it on my calendar already, so I'm looking forward to it.
I've been pushing for 3 days, but everyone's just like, huh? And I'm like, why not? I don't know. I just throw it out there to see what sticks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. It was nice to have a free summer with no obligations, but I would rather have done it and continue to do it. And it's weird to have it in September, but it won't be as hot. It'll be dark earlier, so more night performances, which is kind of nice.
Right.
Gives me 4 months to prep. Gives 4 months for the world to kind of come back to some sense of normalcy. And,
right.
Yeah, I'm excited for all the artists to show artwork and different setup this year with just more ideas as far as like the layout of the yard and kind of having more things in the yard. I want to have more artwork everywhere, kind of cover it, make it look like like something you've never seen before, I guess.
Cool.
As if it already might be something that you'd never seen before. But
yeah.
yeah, maybe new artwork on the background of the stages, things like that. New bands too, like all the bands that are performing will be bands I've never played before.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bands. So that's the goal.
Now, are these bands that have reached out to you with interest, or have you sought them and
both.
gotten them? Okay.
Both. Definitely both. BZ Fest is always both. There's a lot of bands that reach out. Like, I'd say most bands that come through ask about it, or a lot of people reach out all the time, and which has been great. A crazy thing, because I remember poring over emails and begging anybody, will someone play?
Right.
So it's been nice to be able to get more submissions and sift through it, and it's cool. It's nice to see that. It's kind of surreal, but it is what it is.
One of the things I've noticed in following you and the doings of the DZ these past years, I've noticed that you obviously put in a lot of planning and attention and effort, especially everything just kind of comes to a head on that weekend. And then usually the following week, you hit the road for like a good amount of time, and you just kind of get out and give yourself a nice little break. But that's in the middle of the summer. So if you're doing this at the end of September, will you still have that option?
No,
or?
I'll be teaching. It'll be a hard one.
That's kind of what I thought.
It's going to be a really challenging thing to set up for. I'll probably end up building the stages in August, kind of way ahead of time, and which is obnoxious because then my yard has these big, massive stages for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, but it is what it is.
Right.
But I'll probably start setting up slowly over time and taking my time with it, and I will not be able to go away, on vacation or disappear.
Just have to wait until like Christmas holiday or something, right?
Honestly, because we do have a good, classic college Christmas break, which is always 5 weeks. It's
nice.
So I will definitely disappear then.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a hard one, but I'm up for it. I'm ready. I've been trying to be as healthy as possible so I could face it head on, because it's a very stressful thing, very physically and
I can imagine.
emotionally demanding.
And I've seen you running around that backyard and in and out of the house and trying to cover a million different things. And anytime a question comes up, people are like, "Well, get Ben. Where's Ben?" Because you are the brain trust on this. So it's been fun to watch this over the years.
It's been wild.
I bet.
It's been cool to have people like yourself, people from many different backgrounds, many different ethnicities, ages, places, just anybody just coming through. It has nothing to do with, that's been the best part about creativity learning. It has nothing to do with, you need to be this obscure artist. You need to look a certain way, make a certain amount of money. It has everything to do with the, human spirit of expression. Again, the potential of what you want to do, how you want to express yourself, what makes you who you are. The things you're comprised of. It should have nothing to do with your income, your skin color, your gender, your age. It has everything to do with just being a person and expressing yourself. And that's something a lot of adults lose sight of. I'm sure you're more aware of it than I am. They just get older. They detach from that. They say, it's not for me. It can't be. I have a mortgage and insurance and I had to take my kid to the doctor and school plays. I can't focus on that anymore. So it's really great that you keep up with it as a hobby, honestly.
Yeah, and I suppose when you put it that way, I have my wife and my sons to thank for my being able to do that. I mean, that's a privilege to be able to, devote my time to creating art as opposed to working a second job or doing so many things that other people have to do, especially at this time. So fortunately, my wife is very tolerant of all the stuff that I have around the downstairs with just painting stacked up and drawings all over, and some of the stuff is half done, and some of the shit is just like, what is that? Why do you even have that hanging up? And then my sons come in every so often when I'm working on something, so they give me their input, and and it's interesting to always have when I create something. I don't know how other artists do it, but when I create something, I'm just kind of working on what I see, and I'm not necessarily thinking in terms of, okay, I want the viewer to get this X out of it. That whole art interaction and interplay, I suppose, between artist, work, and audience, whoever that audience might be, is kind of a fascinating dynamic. And so when my sons come in, they'll look at something and they'll look at Queen of Instagram and be something like, I don't know, does that mean confusion? Because I see confusion in that. And so then, and that may not necessarily be the thing that I was thinking as I was doing that, but it's awesome to always hear what other people get out of something that you've either drawn, painted. I'm sure as a songwriter, right? Same thing. You create mood. You create soundscapes and things through the lyrics and through the sounds that you have, and then to have people react to it. It could be totally off the mark from what your intent was, but it doesn't make it any less valid. And that type of dialogue is so much fun, I find.
Yeah, no, that's been a really interesting thing about playing in bands for all these years and making music, hearing people's interpretation of it, what they get out of it. For my own music, it's usually something that isn't really hitting the mark. Most people don't fully know, but with other people's music, it's been interesting to see, because I'm not fully involved in the songwriting process, just like putting together the composition of the music, playing bass or guitar, but not actually writing the lyrics. So it's nice to hear what other people say. I could detach and have a little bit more of an objective thought on it. But I love every process of it, from writing a song, composing things, putting it together, orchestrating it, recording it, mixing it, engineering it, mastering it, putting it out there, having shows, seeing a part of it come to fruition through live sound and putting on that production, the video, kind of just all of it. It's really fun to be a part of it, and it's been a great pleasure to learn how to do all of that myself.
I'll bet.
And I don't know. It's been interesting, the places it brings you when you just start saying yes to everything. And many times I was asked if I could do something, and in my head I'm like, I don't even know what that is, but I just say yes. It's like I can't help. It just comes out to say, yes, I could do that. Yes, I could do that.
Right.
Like the thing with Argo is just like, yeah, I could do that. Why not?
Why not? And plunge yourself in and let's see what. But you know what? You have a creative spirit. And I would imagine that people who are genuinely creative or have tapped into that and can kind of work their creativity, they're a little bit more comfortable with just being thrust into a situation, and I'll wing it and kind of, I'll figure my way through this.
Well, I always go to the place where someone else has done it, and like, why can't I?
Sure.
If I can imagine it, I can build it. If I could conjure up the concept, I could execute it. Like, why not?
Yeah.
People have been doing it for thousands of years. What makes them better or different from I?
This may seem like an obvious question, but since you are a musician who is also a music producer, something that a lot of musicians aren't, right? They just perform it, or maybe they mix it or whatever. But you see both sides of the council. For you right now in life, which is more fulfilling?
So playing music, kind of like how making artwork,
Yeah.
is just something you do as a hobby, and because you can detach it from, monetization, from money. It's pure. It has that pure spark. You do it when you do it. You don't when you don't, and no one else has a say on it, no control. So playing music is like that for me. That's why I love to still do it. I play in 3 bands currently and have a couple other concepts and projects I do, but here and there, like Afterglows, Wilshire, things like that.
Yeah.
And that's like the best part of life. Just it's off to the side. No one has a say in it. I don't worry about the downloads. I don't worry about who's going to pay for what. I don't worry about when we're going to play next. And then the music production part of it, the recording, the engineering, the videos, that is equally gratifying, but because it's attached to, a career, money, teaching, a festival, all that, it's a little bit of both. It's still like a creative outlet because everything's always changing. There's always different bands and different ways to accomplish something, and it's a lot more technical. But because it has like money or popularity or something attached to it, it has a slightly different meaning. But it's close. Honestly, I've found a way to hone in to keep them pretty similar as far as pleasure.
Good.
Just one has a little bit more of something attached to it, and the other one is just completely free.
Yeah.
So if I had to pick one, it would be music for sure.
Okay.
But I've learned how to like disassociate them and put them together. When I'm playing music, I don't overanalyze what I'm doing. I get lost in it. Just like when I listen to music now, I don't sit there wondering what kind of kick drum microphone there is.
Okay.
What kind of microphones on the vocals, what kind of preamp, how's it product. I can instantly switch to it, but I try to just stay like as a music listener, as a music lover, what brought me there to begin with.
So wait, if you're listening to something that has been recorded, let's just say something on the radio, can you, just from listening to it, determine certain things like what kind of microphone they use?
Yeah, so there's like 3 places my mind will go.
Okay.
If I choose to, I can go between them. Now, this is taking a lot of practice.
Sure.
This is not something that happened overnight. But it seems like I can go to the production side of it. I can go to the music side of it, like the time signature, the key signature. What notes are they playing? Are they going 1, 4, 5? Are they doing the 1 to the 2 to the 6? Are they staying on the leading tone, tonic note, all that stuff?
Yeah.
So I can go to the composition part of it, or I can just go to the music listener, a consumer who just sits there and takes it in for what it is, the emotions you get from it, things you can extrapolate that bring you to a certain place, a certain memory.
Yeah.
And so I kind of go between all of it,
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember a conversation we had, and it may have actually been the night that you and I ran into each other at a Them Dead Poets show. Oh, man. I forget where this was.
In the city?
No. It was in one of the
Yes.
western suburbs.
Yes, I do remember that.
I forget
It was at a bar in the western suburbs.
Yeah. And it was real tough parking because there was like a circular parking thing around it. Anyways, I remember we had a conversation that night, and I was asking you, because I when I play music, I tend to play bass, and I was asking about the way that you would record somebody. Like, can somebody come up and say, "I want my bass to growl in the mix," and then you would kind of know what that means to be able to make whatever adjustments to make it growl, as opposed to just
shimmer, thick,
just
plucky,
right,
dry.
It's got a
DI
real round sound as opposed to a
punch, fat, all of it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That I find fascinating.
Well, that just takes a lot of time, and it helps to be a musician. Like I play bass, I play guitar, so I understand what that means to want to do that as a musician. Then I understand how to achieve that as an engineer, and how to do both.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's just years. I've been making weird sounds and experimenting with effects pedals, foot pedals, plugins in the software. I've been, for 15 years. So you just start learning. And it's not just how long you've been doing it for, it's what you put in that time frame. So I put a lot of research into it, understanding how those effects pedals work, how they're built, the circuitry behind it, like just trying to understand everything about it. But that's like, the nerd in me just wants to know how to do everything. How
well, I was
going to
say you're all about constructing things too, and so you could disassemble something just to kind of see how it works. So that's awesome.
But it doesn't take away from the magic of it, like knowing everything it takes to make these colors, how like the different thickness of the paintbrush, hair or whatever it is you want to call it,
right?
The different textures of a paper versus a canvas versus a piece of wood. It's good to know all that stuff so you can use them as tools to accomplish the goal.
Right.
It doesn't take away from your expression and what you're doing on these things,
Right.
That's a misconception about, art school or learning about art is, they don't, I don't want to learn how that works. Or I don't want to learn music theory because it'll take away from how I play music. It's like, not really.
Right.
You learn how to drive a car, and now when you drive a car, you're thinking like, 10 and 2, I have to accelerate like this. I have to think that. I need to make sure I'm 500 feet away before I hit the turning signal. Like, no. Once you learn it, it becomes natural.
Right. It's like breathing, and then you could just...
Yeah. You just learn. It's good to learn the fundamentals. You could properly attack it, and you could properly use it and know when you should and shouldn't do something. And then after a while, all that goes away. All that learning goes away. I mean, it's still there, but it becomes just a reaction.
Right. And you can invoke it when necessary. You could think, okay, this, X works the way it does because, and you could kind of fall back on whatever prior knowledge you had with it. While you were talking, I was reminded of there's an ad on social media right now, and maybe you folks have seen it, but it's it's a guy who is advertising something for something to play electric guitar, and his whole angle with the ad is you don't have to learn music theory to be able to make killer guitar solos. And so he's explaining how you don't need to know all that stuff. And as I'm looking at the ad, I can't help thinking to myself, well, I suppose you can just kind of feel your way through it. But that takes years and years of playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you know where you are on the fretboard, you kind of have a sense. But I would imagine knowing the theory adds a whole different layer to how you can construct something, because that's going to give you ideas on harmony, on timing, on different ways to tinker with all of that stuff. So taking away any of the academic, it isn't just all feel, obviously, but like you say, it isn't all just the book learning aspect of it either. It's all of it together, digested, and then the artist somehow brings that out and creates something.
Yeah, it's a balance. It's a really tedious balance, but I started playing guitar at 14, and I just taught myself. So I never had proper training or anything. And then about 19 years old, I took a music theory class at the Moraine Valley, and I took three of them, and that helped a lot. It helped make sense of what I was doing, and I grew tremendously from that. What I learned in the following 2-3 years might have taken me a decade, and I learned it in 2-3 years, and I was able to attribute things to what I was doing. I was able to understand key signatures a lot better and come up with alternate tunings for songs and make sense of it. The biggest thing is it helps with communication. Like if you're in a band with 5 people, 4 people, and everyone understands music theory, when you're coming up with ideas, you could just speak the language.
Sure.
It is a language. It's a language that I could speak and understand. I wouldn't be able to write it really well. Like I only learned so much reading of music notes and notation. But with what I do, I don't really need to. I don't, compose music like that. I just come up with the music theory. I use music theory to come up with the construct of the whole song.
Okay.
And like the tunings and chord progressions and stuff. But as far as,
writing a score.
Yeah, I don't really do that. No. So that becomes more into like classical music and performance and jazz where you're actually sheet reading, and it's just different. It's just not what I was interested in. I wanted to know just enough to like extrapolate from it and do something with it, but not I didn't feel like going that far into that world. I just needed enough information. So now, if I'm talking with someone, I can hold up a conversation with it, but I don't. I have some friends that could just, sight read everything fluently, and I can't do that.
Yeah.
And no need to. Now with my career, I play in rock bands.
I used to be able to read music. When I was in fourth grade, that's when I started playing guitar. I had an acoustic. My parents got me an electric. It was a Squire, I think, and so there was a Quinlan and Fabish music on 79th Street, real close to Western, like 79th and Western. I grew up in St. Thomas More Parish, so I was like 79th and Francisco. I went to St. Lawrence High School, but I was right there, maybe half a mile away from Quinlan and Fabish.
That's Chicago, right?
Yeah. And so they had guitar lessons. So I remember during fourth grade going for weekly guitar lessons where he showed me, how to do the notes. I was reading notes. I was playing, Turkey in the Straw quite well.
What made you want to do this?
I wanted to learn guitar.
Just naturally drawn to it?
But then that lasted about a year. And then when I hit fifth grade, I think that's maybe around when Star Wars came out. And now suddenly I wasn't interested in guitar anymore. Now I was interested in Star Wars. So I had this guitar sitting there, and I had kind of a basic language of how to read notes on a staff and all this stuff. But that was lost very quickly. But I always had my guitars. I always, had an interest in playing something. And then when I got to high school, I was in a couple of small bands, but they would have been more like along the lines of like a garage band. And so you're just kind of sitting around, hey, I'll play these three chords and then I'll do this and I'll kind of keep timing. And so it's just very, very basic. I don't think we even necessarily paid attention to a key that we were playing in. It was just, let's just do these three chords. Let's do a cover of Louie Louie, for 20 minutes. And then, so that's the extent of my music playing back at that time.
When did it just kind of fade away with college?
Yeah, in college, I had a couple of friends from high school that I still kept in touch with. And so we each had our acoustics. And so I think it was around 86 or 87 that we were the Fireside Chaps. And so we did all kinds of goofy covers of songs. We were doing a lot of acoustic Pink Floyd and Zeppelin and that type of thing. But then we also had some originals that we did. And so we would record those. And that was kind of a staple of our Friday nights. We'd get together in Kelly's basement. Somebody brought the booze, and we would sit there drinking, and we would, record music or whatever. And so that lasted... that was pretty much it for college. It lasted for maybe a year and a half.
What college was this? St. Xavier?
I was at St. Xavier at that point.
You said something about Lewis earlier.
Yeah, I went to Lewis University for one semester. That was the fall of 84. That was right after I graduated. At that point, I was going to be a psych major. And I spent that semester, I had a lot of fun that semester. I was living in a dorm out at Lewis. I had a girlfriend. What are classes? I was just living. This was like the first time away from my parents, away from anything, right? No rules. And so at the end of that semester, I tell my students this. At the end of that semester, I had 3 Fs. I had an incomplete, and I had a B, my English class. But that was just humiliating to me. That is the worst. I've never had grades that bad. I had never had grades that bad. And so I had to face my parents, right? This was lost money. This was wasted time. It was a colossal mess. And this was the first big thing I ever did in my life that, was like a major regret. So when I finished up that semester of my own accord, I told my parents, this is what happened. I completely fucked this up. And I'm just going to withdraw from Lewis. And when I was going through my application process, I had also been accepted to St. Xavier. So at that point, that's when I contacted St. Xavier and transferred my one class over. And essentially had to start from scratch my second in the spring of 85.
Now, when you transferred over, did they the Fs, they just all were incompletes when you transfer them, or?
Yeah, nothing, none of that counted. So I had to
Okay.
take those classes all over again, or take different ones, to fulfill, because that was all gen eds.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I started at college. But then, at St. Xavier, I started resuming art classes as my electives. That was a chance where I could now get into some oil painting. And so there were a whole bunch of different things that I was doing through my electives while I was now studying for English. And then I had, these buddies who were from high school, but then we were also just kind of doing the fireside chap things and just kind of jamming on a Friday night.
That's brings me back to my early college years of Friday night, getting off work at UPS, flying home, packing up my car with my amp, guitar pedals, and guitar. Picking up Charlie from Fasano's Pizza.
Good.
Driving to Vinny's, setting up the whole band practice. Everyone showing up, trying to have band practice, but Vinny invited too many people over to hang out, and I was trying to have band practice for Wilshire, and it just was always a mess.
Yeah.
And yeah, that brings me back to that. Just like Friday night band practice in a friend's basement, just not really getting enough done, getting something done. Just goofing around. It wasn't until we started having him here that it got more, because I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't invite people over. I kept it just band. I was trying to take it more seriously.
So you and Vinny were the first to kind of institute Wilshire?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was us, and then my friend Brendan came along, and then we had Dill and Steven, and then we kind of stopped doing stuff for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
6 years. Yeah.
Do you still consider that an active band, or?
Yes and no, only because there's no rules, there's no record labels, no money, there's nothing attached to it. So it's like whenever I want to do it, I'll do it. Until then, I'm doing other things.
You're right, right.
It doesn't really. That's the nice thing about it. Like we were mentioning earlier with art, it's like you can when you don't have anything attached to it, when it's not your job, you can pick it up, put it down whenever you need to.
Yeah.
It's its own thing. It's when you feel the calling, you go to it, and when you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that brings me back to that. What we called the what chaps? The
fireside chat.
Fireside chat. Where'd that come from?
Well, the fireside chats. We were trying to be clever.
Oh, okay.
So we had. You know what? I haven't thought of this in years. We had an album cover. If we ever came out with an album, it was going to be there was a fireplace in Kelly's basement, so we stoked up a fire. We put each of our 3 acoustics, and we had. What is that cap? It's almost like, well, anyhow, we had caps. Each of us had caps that we put on top of the headstock, and we had scarves. And so we put scarves around the neck. And so that was a nice little picture of the Fireside Chaps. That would be our debut album. I don't remember what the title was. But, it's one of those early goofy things where, hey, when we become famous, we're going to do this. And you come up with goofy ideas and stage things and...
Everyone's done that.
Yeah.
I did a lot of that too. And then I realized that I don't think I'll ever be famous, nor do I want to be famous for music.
Yeah.
Just that you don't make when you make certain types of music, you realize early on, like, this is not popular music. Like, some people will like it, but it's not going to be top 40. It's not going to be on the Billboard. It's not going to have hundreds of millions of streams. It's not palatable like that.
Right.
You don't digest music like that so easily. But I like it though, because it's just a form of expression, and it's for me. It's for those around me who care. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah,
there's no rules.
Sometimes the best art is that which comes from the artist, just purely from the artist, what he or she wants, and the audience will come to it.
Mm-hmm.
If they're interested, they'll gravitate toward it, and it finds its own audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you still play bass?
Yeah, I mean, I still can. I don't really have. I'm not part of a band or anything, and but I still, as I listen to music and stuff, I always kind of gravitate toward the lower end. Always trying to pick up on, what technique is the bassist using? Does it sound like they're doing pick or finger style? So I like to kind of focus on the bottom end. Because then when I started at Argo. I taught with another English teacher who was long gone by the time you had gotten to Argo. But he was just a few years older than me, and he was also into music, and he was playing guitar and so forth. And so the two of us got together with another gentleman who was a former Argonaut. And so then we had a band for about 2 years, and we actually played shows. That
cool.
band was called the Martini Horrors. I think I told you about that already.
Yeah.
The Martini Horrors.
That's
so
funny.
we had.
Was this in the 90s?
This was early 90s. This was right around the time of the grunge era and all of that, because we were right in the thick of what we were doing when Kurt Cobain died. So that's how I remember.
That's funny that you
time
say
period.
that. Mr. Berta, I think he played drums in your band for the
faculty band.
talent
Yeah,
show.
Larry Berta. Yeah.
Yeah. One time I was like a senior. I was walking around Argo. I had, I was an aid pass for Mr. Malloy. So I kind of used that to just do whatever I wanted,
Sure.
right? As one would. And I was wearing a Kurt Cobain shirt where he's smoking a cigarette on the front, which is a no-no in high school.
Right.
And then on the back, it shows his Mustang, his Fender Mustang, and like all the parts of it. And
Oh,
a diagram.
Yeah.
And he was walking past me, and I was like, oh no, because he was like a dean at the time. I was like, he's
Yeah.
going to say something. And he just smiles at me and looks at me, and then he turns around and sees the back part, and he's like, nice, Fender
Yeah,
Mustang.
yeah.
And I was just like, oh, yeah, Fender Mustang, cool. And yeah, that was funny, though, that the dean just didn't say anything about the cigarette and said something about the guitar. And
Yeah.
I was like, that's
Yeah.
cool. I like that.
Larry Bird is a good guy. He was probably, in my opinion, one of the most misunderstood people at Argo at that time, because everybody associated him with being a total badass, right? A real hard ass, because he was the dean and rarely smiled, and he was usually, the one to lay down the law on various things. But once you got to know him, he was a very good guy.
Well, that, like, up until then, I was terrified of him.
Sure.
And then that happened. I was like, oh, he's not that bad.
Yeah.
That's funny. It's such an interesting thing to get older now and be the age of the teachers I had and realize like they were just people, just like living their life, and every teacher is like that. It's been interesting to grow
Sure.
older and start to finally relate to like what the teachers had to deal with. They were just trying to keep the peace and be there for students. Having students of my own, I realized how much weight, of the world teachers take on through their students opening up to them, telling them stuff they wouldn't tell their parents.
Right.
Unpaid, unqualified therapists you end up being.
Exactly.
And I'm starting to realize that now with my students, and you have way more, and you've been doing it a long time. So you hear stuff. You see, like you mentioned earlier, like dysfunctional homes and families. You start to hear that. You could just tell. You see it in a kid, something's not right, and then they might open up to you because you might ask them, like, what's going on? You're normally okay. Why are you doing poor right now? Like, what happened? And why is your grade failing? And they might tell you stuff, and you're like, oh, no. Like, I can't believe I just heard that.
Right.
What do I do with that? It's different with you because they're underage, so there's stuff that you might have to actually tell the state. And,
there are things that we would have to act on, but you're right. I mean, and what an honor too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for anybody to be vulnerable enough in your presence to be able to say, this is what's wrong, this is what's happening. I mean, that alone is one of the really more profound things with education. Is just being that you're essentially a stranger to the kid, and yet somehow, in the course of the time that you work with that student, you hope that your content gets across to the student. But ultimately, do we remember the content? No, we remember the person, right? And the way that person spoke to us, the way that teacher spoke to us, and or related events or whatever. We just remember the person rather than the content. And that's been, over 32 years of teaching. That's been an adjustment for me, is recognizing the fact that in the grand scheme of things, the content of what I've been teaching has been nice, useful. It's great to have a kid leave your class and say, hey, I enjoyed reading that or doing this assignment or this project because it was just kind of fun or whatever. But ultimately, they don't remember a lot of the content, but they do remember how they were treated by you or how well you listen to them or whatever. And so that's the part that's that whole life-touching thing. It sounds very cliche, sounds very over dramatic or whatever, but there's some truth to that, man. And that's what I kind of like about it.
And it's a very real thing. That's something I think of.
Yeah.
I don't think of my grades or the assignments in high school. I think of the connections to the teachers.
Right.
You know, I had a few friends that I was close with, and then I was actually just friends with teachers because to me, they had more experiences in life. They were more wise. They had better things to say, more constructive things to say. When you took down the veil of their teaching hat and you got to just hang out with them one-on-one, you got to realize, like, how much fun they were, or like they can, you know, fill in some wisdom, show you cool music you never would have heard of, tell you cool films you never would have saw, tell you about books that are too advanced or they wouldn't teach in high school, tell you about restaurants to go to.
Sure.
You know, just things like that. And that's something I really enjoyed about high school was the teachers, it wasn't the students. Students are everywhere. They're always the same. And I wasn't into what a lot of them were into, to be honest. So for me, it was the impact of the teachers and the faculty and learning from them. And no, it's a profound thing. It's for 32 years, you know, hundreds of students a year, thousands overall.
Yeah.
You're going to impact a lot of people. And when I look back, and I don't think, again, about the assignments or the tests, I think about those moments with them. Yeah, how did they treat me? How were they? Were they nice? Were they not? Were they fun? Some of my teachers were so much fun, and some I wish I never had
Not
them.
so
you
much,
know?
right.
Yeah, there was some that Mr. Bonomo, that I had I only had him. He retired my freshman year.
Okay.
But he was just so much fun, and you know, my friend Jake and I would always fall asleep in his English class, and he would always play pranks on us.
Sure.
Instead of giving us detentions, he would play pranks on us to keep us from falling asleep.
Right.
So he would like slam a book over our head and scare the crap out of us.
Right.
And so it was like a fun way of being like, detentions are probably not going to deter you, but maybe if I have fun with you showing that like I can be on your level as a person, then maybe you'll stop and pay attention. And it worked.
Sure.
It didn't take but, you know, a couple weeks before we stopped doing that.
Yeah. And your motivation for it at the time probably wasn't, I don't want to do this again because he might get mad this time.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably something closer to, I don't know, I don't want to disappoint him.
Yeah, I feel guilty.
He's a good guy.
He's a nice
giving me a
person.
break, and I don't want to do this to him again.
That's exactly what it was. It's exactly what it was. And ultimately, a lot of instructors start to realize it's not you. It's probably something going on at home or in their life. Like, I just wasn't sleeping. I had a weird high school experience because of life, and I just like, it wasn't the people themselves. It was just what you're going through at home.
Right.
That's a lot of it.
Now, with your students, you're what, 30, 31?
I'm 31.
So you're much closer to their age.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that they see you as adult, professor,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or do some of them kind of see you as just a slightly older peer?
It depends. Like, so I've had a couple that were like 25, 26, 27, and they definitely saw me more as like a more accomplished older peer.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, all the way down to 18, 19, and they're just like afraid of you. You're like,
You're still an authority figure.
yeah, you're some authority figure, or, you know, a professor. And I try to break the ice the first day and just be like, call me Ben. That's all I am. Like, I'm nothing better than that. Just treat me like that. And, you know, I'll treat you with respect and keep it simple. But a lot of them, it's been pretty nice, and everyone's been really respectful. I've had very few incidents, maybe one, all in the last 3 years. So, but it's been interesting. I enjoy being closer to age. I can relate on stuff.
Right.
But there's enough of a gap where, you know, they laugh at me, make fun of me because I don't know what they're talking about. Something in pop culture.
Sure. Right.
You know, you definitely get it, but I'm just like, they would think I would, but because I'm kind of an old man, an old soul, I really don't know what they're talking about. And they're just
Example.
like, how do you? They'll talk about like memes.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't look at memes. I don't know. I barely know what one is. And they're just like, what? What? And I'm just like, they're like, how is that possible? You're like so young. I'm like, that's not how I've been. I just don't care about those things. I don't look into them. I don't find them that interesting personally.
Yeah.
I don't care what people do. But for me, I'm just like, I rather, you know, talk about music and film and travel and art and philosophy and creativity and human-related stuff, and the internet spectacles don't do that for me personally. They're too superficial. not enough depth to them for me. Like
Right.
it's just not what I need.
Right.
You know, it's fun. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, they are fun. They're humorous, but I rather find humor in other things.
Yeah.
How about you? How do you feel about the internet and everything it has to offer? Being your age, I mean, you grew up for many years without it.
Oh yeah,
Period.
it was. I mean, just the distraction aspect is what drives me nuts. You know, for myself, not even so much for the students, which is bad enough. But you know, when I think about you know, all the time that you spend scrolling, or all the time you spend, you know, dicking around with this and that on either Facebook or Instagram or, you know, whatever social media platform you're using. You know, there are days where or sometimes weekends where I just need to kind of force myself to not even go. I'm just going to charge my phone and leave it there and just do other stuff. That's another drive for my art. Is a lot of times I use that to kind of force myself to get away from electronic things. You know, I just want to deal with purely organic material over here. Give me ink, paper, pen. You know, whatever medium, and I just don't want to look at electronics for a while.
Where do you think it comes from? Like that form of expression where you can take a utensil, a tool, take something from here and just make it happen, make it appear. Like, where does it come from for you personally? You know, because it's definitely different for everyone. But like, where? I always wonder. It's different for everyone. Where does it come from? That spark. That ability to take information and translate it, but it's always going to come out slightly distorted from your mind.
Right.
You know, what is it? What is it about us that makes us do it as humans, and why? I know it's a big question, but I always think about it.
Well, I just wonder if at center, if reality is just way too overwhelming for us. And so we seek to adapt our lives, as we naturally always do, to make things a little bit more comfortable or palatable for ourselves. So what drives creativity? What drives addiction? What drives, you know, so many different factors that make us human? I wonder if it has something to do with our perception of reality. And sometimes we feel, you know, maybe a person feels that reality is just too confining. And so we need balance. We need liberation to balance that confinement. And so liberation comes through what? Sleep, like I say, addiction, or substance use, you know, and then you get into more creative things. You know, I just want to do something to get me out of reality temporarily. Because we all know we're going to have to go back into that. We're still going to have to wake up on Monday morning and go to work, or, you know, do whatever it is that we have to do. But at least this gives us a temporary reprieve and a little bit of, I don't know, satisfaction.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There might not be a full answer. It might be an abstract thought, and that's what that might be what makes it what it is. The fact that there is no answer. It's a part of balance, but it's a part of the in betweens of what makes us who we are. It's not actually possible to get to that point. You know, maybe it infinitely grows, and you don't actually get an answer out of it. Art, poetry, writing, books, film, novels, acting, writing, cooking, sleep is a great one. Sleep is an art form, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Some practice it quite well.
Yeah. Fashion, you know.
Right.
Even when we do it with our hair, cutting it, dyeing it, shaping it, we're always trying to express ourselves.
Yeah.
It's sad when people think that they don't have that ability to express yourself. Like, you do. It just might not manifest in a traditional sense. It might not be that you're a painter, or a poet, or a writer, or a musician, or, you know, or a drawer, or anything like that, making sculptures. But, you know, like, I realize, like, I'll never be a traditional trained, you know, classically trained musician. I make more like sound art. I make more abstract sounds with guitar. And I realize, like, that's my form of musicianship. It's not quite the same as, you know, classically trained musician. Like, if someone said, like, oh, you play music? Yeah. Can you, like, pick up the guitar and play me something? I'd be like, I don't play covers. I only know 11-minute songs that I've wrote in alternate tunings. Like
Right.
I couldn't play what you think.
Right.
I don't play like that. That's not how I, get it out of my system. So there's many forms of it. I suggest to anybody, just try something, whatever it might be. It might be maybe you get into martial arts, maybe you get into cooking, maybe you get into yoga and exercise, and whatever it is, just something. Maybe you just like to write in a journal.
Right.
Maybe like to just read books. I don't know. I mean, whatever you can do, again, to have that liberation of taking away from reality.
Right.
Because reality is pretty, it could be boring, it could be harsh, it could be very depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I don't know why there's like that trope of like, if you have to be, miserable and sad to be an artist, it's like, no, you don't. You know?
Yeah, I wonder how much of that comes from like writers of the Beat generation. Because I get this. Well, I couldn't even say from them. I was going to say Beats because that whole post World War II thing. I mean, you had the emergence of with Kerouac and Ginsberg and maybe even the beatnik idea, right? You have to be this sloppy bohemian who has the goatee and the shades and you're just playing bongos and living day to day, and there's some type of part of that to the image of the artist. But that bohemianism actually goes back to like the late 19th century with the poetry of Arthur Rimbaud. A guy who wrote, I think, most of his poetry. He was done writing poetry by the time he was 18 or 19 years old. He had written like all of this poetry, lived a wild lifestyle all over the place, experimenting, putting his body through all kinds of experiments with substances to kind of hone in on the poetic. But I think, to a degree, maybe stories of that, contribute to this idea that you have to be a pained soul to somehow, create art.
On the fringe, you got to be a little odd.
Yeah. You got right, really odd. And, maybe that is an offshoot of creativity in some way. But like you say, I mean, anybody can be creative. And you could be creative in your own creative way.
Yeah. I mean, if someone took a look at you, especially like in your teaching attire, they would never expect that this type of thing comes out of someone like you. They would expect it from some like, bohemian type, someone who's got,
right,
different colors, maybe some tattoos.
Long hair, maybe. All
Speaks
of that.
a certain way,
Right.
makes a certain amount of money, makes no money, things like that.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that way. It's sad. I wish more people were less afraid to do it. I realize that people want to do it. They just feel like ashamed or embarrassed or like nervous. They maybe made fun of people who express themselves a lot, so they were kind of like they don't want to go back on that.
Sure,
that whole
right.
lifestyle, that notion.
Yeah.
You play sports, right? Or you played a lot of sports?
No.
You teach. You taught them. Or you coached them.
I coached when they hired me at Argo. They asked me if I would be willing to coach football and baseball, freshman levels for both. And I was just looking for a job, and so I was like, sure, I could coach football, I could coach baseball, and I had never coached either one. I had never played either one.
When you said that, I was like, oh, he must have played.
No.
So it's strange when they hired you to do that and you never played.
Yeah, I mean, I just told them, listen, I'll coach it. I'll be the best damn coach you ever had at the freshman level. So then I hit the books. I started, looking at some video, trying to figure out like what I would do, and not that I was good at coaching it because I was still kind of learning both sports. But after I spent about 7 years coaching those things, then once we had our own kids, then I started coaching Little League for my sons, for each of my sons, and head coached, one team and then assisted with most of the teams, kind of helped them out at home. And so it helped me on a personal level, being able to coach the kids. But I was never into sports.
It's interesting.
Or any of that.
I always find it interesting when people coach who didn't play. That's fascinating. How do you know like how to relate to them on a fundamental level, like what it's like to be in those shoes?
I don't know that I ever really learned that for the years that I was coaching at Argo. I just know that from a coaching side, both sports just appeal to completely different aspects of the psyche. I loved baseball, coaching baseball for the strategy that was involved with it, all the little nuances of, when to shade a certain way, when to, drift a certain way, how to set up your infield, everything that happens in communication between a pitcher and catcher or other players, and then obviously once the ball is in play, everything that transpires. So there's a lot of cool little subtle things, silent things kind of going on with baseball that makes it, for me, just a really, really fun sport. Coaching football, on the other hand, was purely primal, guttural, right? You could get into a kid's face and tell him what to do at a certain volume and with a certain thing in your voice that you knew would just, ignite something so that he would go off and do something.
Yeah.
In baseball, you can't do that. And so again, that interaction back and forth and how you interact, how coaches interact with players, how you approach strategy with each game, those differences made for a lot of fun. And so as a student of the game, while I was coaching it, that was a fun part.
And what about like the repercussions of like football? Is that something you guys ever thought about, like the CTE and concussions and the issues, the injuries on these kids? Yeah,
it's horrible what goes on with all of that, but with all those concussions, and who was the most recent one now? That there was a NFL player just last week, maybe.
What happened? What did he do?
Well, he's just suffering really badly from maybe it's Steve McMichael.
I don't know,
from the Bears. I don't know. Well, anyhow, there's I remember when I was coaching football, we we're always working with the kids on wearing the proper equipment, wearing your equipment the right way, making sure that helmets fit properly. So we were all very good about it. And to be honest with you, while I was coaching it, this was 91 to about 98, maybe. There wasn't a lot of attention being given to the medical repercussions of it. And then my younger son was the one who played tackle football for a few years out where I live. And he, by then they were already starting to talk about, all these concussions and all the medical problems that were stemming from it. So there they were much more cognizant of, helmets fitting properly, making sure you have all that stuff. But because Argo didn't have, I don't think it does now either, but Argo did not have any kind of feeder program for its football team. Didn't seem like there were a lot of kids at that time that were coming to Argo who had played Park District football in any way. So literally, the coaches and I were teaching kids how to put in your hip pads, your tailbone pad, how this girdle is supposed to go on. We had to help dress kids at the start of a season just so they knew what to do. So that was, really taking it from ground level and trying to teach this to the kids.
I wonder where it's going to end up going with the new medical knowledge of 2021, the new information we know. I don't see it lasting forever, honestly, especially at that age, because we realize the repercussions of it's not worth it. These kids are not going to be in the NFL. They're not going to be making that type of money to counteract the repercussions. And even that, I would argue, is not worth it. $10 million a year is not worth you losing your mind at 30.
Right. Right.
I
would agree with you, but I can foresee all kinds of backlash if people said that they were going to no longer have that sport or put certain limitations. With all the nonsense reaction with face masks, I could just see a lot of people really getting nuts if you no longer had high school football programs.
Well, I could see the schools not taking them away, but less parents having their kids in it. So like the turnout becomes less and less to the point where the school has to think about it. We need 30 kids and only 18, signed up.
Right.
Something like that. Yeah, I mean, you probably never get that with baseball. Not with basketball. With basketball, you more have to worry about blowing out your knees and ankles. That's definitely a thing. Like, that's what I played at Argo, and that's what I did was basketball.
Okay.
But, yeah, with football, that's a hard one. That's a really hard one. Not so good, especially the helmets. You just feel like you can hit harder. You're more protected.
Right.
You're making it worse.
And I can't tell you how many times when we were coaching the kids, and we were coaching how to make a tackle properly, the kids would always dip their head, and it's like, dude, keep your head up. And it was really tough trying to drill that into them to remember. It's
natural.
That.
You can get more angle and momentum with dipping down. You can kind of get a little bit better of an angle and tackle harder, and you have that.
Yeah, you figure this is protected.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I'm glad I never played those sports. I mean, I did a lot of backyard football. Definitely got hurt doing that, but nothing with and playing backyard football with no pads. We would tackle each other with our heads up. You don't want to. You're not using your head, so
right.
We would get banged up, but all that got banged up was our arms, shoulder, hip, bruises. But that's fine. You can survive that just fine.
Right.
It's the head stuff you don't want, the neck stuff. And we played all the time. Big teams, mud, always hitting each other. But the fact there isn't pads, you don't get as hurt. Now, do
you notice any aches and pains that are maybe residual from those days?
From basketball, yeah.
Yeah.
I've sent my knees sideways and my ankles sideways many times.
Oh, wow.
A lot of torn muscles or ACL and a lot of issues with that. But I did it a lot, and I played basketball, organized basketball, maybe 5 years, and I played basketball on in driveways and on the street for my whole life, probably 17, 18 years, from like a little kid to early 20s.
Okay.
And I stopped because I just kept rolling ankles and getting hurt. And the last time I played, last summer, my knee went sideways, and I couldn't do anything for a couple of weeks, and it really hurt. It scared me.
Last summer?
Yeah, June 1st. God. Yeah, it was bad.
Who were you playing with?
Some friends, right over here in the driveway.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and I'm like, what am I doing this for? I'm not getting paid. I'm not making a mark. I have nothing to prove. I have other life to live. I don't need to be doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the only thing. But more long-term effects from like the extreme sports, the longboarding, the wakeboarding, the skiing, water skiing, climbing stuff. That I got hurt a lot more doing those things. Yeah, just more impact, higher speeds, more errors to be made.
Right.
Yeah. Again, once I realized, like, what am I doing? I'm not making money to do this. Nothing to prove. I'm not winning medals. I don't need to be doing this anymore. Yeah. It was fun, and I got a different life to live.
Pretty soon you'll be an old man golfing.
I know. I mean, I like golf, and it's probably why it's not that bad on the body. It's also just kind of fun.
Yeah.
To be out in nature. It's kind of goofy. I don't know.
That's one sport I played. You forget, or at least in our discussion, I was thinking, regular team sports and stuff. But I've golfed. I've been on bowling leagues a couple of years.
Nice.
So those are a couple sports.
We need to go
I've done.
golfing sometime.
Oh, you know what? I don't think I can golf
anymore.
Back and hip and stuff. To be honest with you, I'd love to go bowling again, but even
that's harder.
That's not gonna. I can't do that.
Yeah,
I can't. I'll have to use that thing. Line it up and just kind of drop it and.
Yeah,
you could put the bumpers up for me. That's how I'll be bowling now.
I'm not a very good bowler. I'm like a straight shooter. My friends are like, you got some decent technique. If you learn how to curve it, you'd be better. I'm like, I just don't do it enough. I bowl like once every 6 months.
Yeah,
it's fun. I enjoy the camaraderie. It's very inexpensive sport. I, for some reason, have my own bowling ball and bowling shoes. I have my mom's old bowling ball, I think, from like the 70s. I still use it. And then I have bowling shoes I stole from Elmar Bowl, which is closed down when I was 16.
Is it closed down now?
I believe it closed. I think they sold it, and I think it's closed.
Oh, wow.
I think. That's what I've heard.
Okay.
I don't bowl enough. But golf is fun because it's very strategic, very challenging, very technical. So much precision and so much just probably the most skillful sport. I mean, you have to get everything right. It's so tedious.
Right. And you're battling elements.
Yeah.
So throughout all of that, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just nice. It's more quiet. You're on your own. It's kind of like in your head,
Yep.
That golf and like chess are two things I enjoy doing with you. We got to start playing chess again.
Yeah, we got to start playing chess again because I haven't lost enough to you over the years,
It's only a couple times. That's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, we gotta when we're able to get into Strange Brew again, we could bring the chessboard.
Start playing some chess.
Yeah,
again.
do some chess again.
I love chess. I want to play it more, and enough people I know play, but no one ever really brings it up. And I know it got a renaissance again from that show, Queen's Gambit.
Right.
Made it cool to play chess when you and I, the nerds, were suffering.
Yep. Yep.
That always happens. Music or a movie or a TV show makes something cool that normally was just kind of looked over, neglected.
Right.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden it's popular.
It's popular. Yeah. Isn't that funny how that works?
Weird. Weird.
So you've been being an English teacher, does this come from a passion of writing, reading, the language? Where'd that come from? Because you do art, you play music, you dabbled in sports and activities. Where did English teaching come from? English literature.
Well, I remember always being a reader in grade school and throughout high school. I was good at reading and I enjoyed reading, but I never really thought about teaching English. I knew that I could probably get a degree in something for teaching, but as English specifically wasn't necessarily part of it. So when I started college, I intended to be go into psychology, psychotherapy. I wanted to be more like therapy and counseling, and eventually get into something like that. But to get to the level that I intended would have required a lot more school, more than I was willing to put in the time at that point in my life. I just kind of wanted to start a career. I didn't want to just be in school constantly. So then I made a change, maybe like the start of middle of my sophomore year, and I switched from psychology to English. And so I figured I enjoy reading, so I'll just read some good stuff. I'll just have to write a little bit more than normal, and then in the process I'll minor in education, and then I'll be able to teach English. So the whole thing kind of started in college as a changed major. And just as I went through St. Xavier's English program, I just had some phenomenal teachers, and the classes were gripping to me. There was a Shakespeare class that was really good, an 18th century lit class that I took that was killer. Had a phenomenal world literature teacher. Her name was Dr. Pilar Rotella. She was from Catalonia, Spain. And little woman, just real little woman, but powerful voice. And oh my God, did she make us read a shit ton of stuff in one semester. It's like for next week, I want you to read Dante's Inferno. For the following week, I want you to read these two novels, for the week after that. And it was just nuts. And she was one of those teachers that you hear about from your peers. It's like, oh my God, when you get into that class, all you're going to be doing is taking notes throughout the whole class because, she's just talking and talking. And sure enough, that was just an amazing class. And so she was inspiring to me as far as, okay, you know what, there's a passion there. I kind of like some of the lit that I'm teaching or that I'm reading. And so I think I'd like to do that. So that's kind of how the whole interest in English started.
You just started in college, huh?
Yeah, a little bit of high school with reading, but then to actually teach it was in college.
And did you get a job at Argo right out of college?
No, when I first graduated, I taught for because I was off that one semester, right? So I graduated, or the end of my senior year at St. Xavier was at Christmas time. So now I had a whole semester, and so I applied to a whole ton of schools, and I got hired at Proviso West in Hillside, and I was covering for, I think, a woman who was on maternity leave, maybe, and so that was my first full-time job teaching, was just kind of covering for this other woman. So I taught 5 classes. It was everything, but it was just a one-semester deal. They said, you're not going to be back because the person's going to be coming back. And then I got a job at Revis, and so I taught at Revis for 2 years. Did not particularly like it there. So then I but I was also in the midst of getting a master's in English while I was at Revis. So then when I left Revis for 1 year, I subbed in the CPS system. And then I think it was in 93. 93, fall of 93 is when I started at Argo. So Argo was the third school that I had taught at.
Okay.
But it's obviously been the longest.
Yeah, 27?
Yeah, since 93. So I don't do math. You're probably right.
20. You're born in 66?
No. If I started teaching there in 93 and it's 21, how many years have I been?
28 years.
28. Okay. 28 years at Argo.
Yeah.
Wow.
How's that feel? I'm 31, almost my whole life you've been there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gone through so many changes.
It has. Since I went there to when I've gone back now.
You had the field house, right? Or was that after?
Yeah, that was built in like 03, 04.
Okay, yeah. So
I started in 04. It was fresh when I got there.
Nice.
But the way it is now, it's amazing what they've done with it.
Yeah, with the Portillo Center.
Which is crazy to think about. And it's fun to, be a part of that now and do things there. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's fun. Interesting.
Now, when you did the DZ Winterfest 2 winters ago, you were one of the first ones to have to be able to put on a performance and stuff in that new building. What kind of acoustic challenges were there for the acts? Because you had to oversee all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
what was wacky or challenging?
Nothing really. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to know really good live sound engineers that came in, part of my team, and it honestly was acoustically very nice and sound. It was not bad at all. And then having the smaller stage in the lobby area was great, and that sounded good within that little space kind of hidden away there. Yeah, nothing really. It sounded pretty loud and big, different from what I'm used to. I'm used to basement shows and small bars and dive bars and stuff.
Yeah.
It sounded really great, and the monitor mix sounded good. I'm also very tolerant to not the best playing conditions. Not saying that was, but I know I've performed and been around it so much that all I really need is the drummer. I don't need to hear vocals or anything. You should never have to be a musician that relies on those cues. Otherwise, you'll find yourself upset all the time because not every venue can accommodate you to hear everything well. So you should learn how to play with just your drummer or bass player, not have to worry about what the other guitar player, synth, piano, drums, or saxophone or vocals are doing.
Yeah.
You should be able to play without them. But I didn't have that situation. It's actually really well built. I would say pretty state of the art, to be honest.
Nice.
It's nice. I mean, you've been in there a bunch now, right?
Yeah. I don't study sound or really know what to listen for.
They did a
with all
great
of
job
that,
with it. Just the way it sounds naturally when you walk around it and clap, and the acoustic paneling everywhere.
Right.
It's a nice building. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful the students get to have that now.
Yeah.
Especially in the music program and
the theater program. All of those get to reap the benefits of that, and that was very generous of them to do that.
Yeah. What about the old theater? What do they do with that?
Right now, it's just it's probably been a good year since I've walked in there. I think they right now just have it as an open area, a common area. Okay, if students needed to, if they weren't meeting in a class but they had to go somewhere, they could be there. But I don't know, to be honest with you, what the plan is for that. I know they want to convert it into something, and it's certainly a wide open space. But whether they're going to add a floor to it and it's going to be classroom space on 2 floors, or if it's going to stay open like that, I'm not sure.
One of the weirdest experiences there, besides the Winterfest, was the Bernie Sanders rally I went to there.
Yeah, I was not there for that, but
that was wild.
Yeah.
I was like, this is where I used to play basketball and have gym class, and now I'm right next to Bernie Sanders at this rally, and Vampire Weekend performed. It was very strange.
Yeah.
The Secret Service, just seeing them in action was pretty wild. They were on top of stuff. I've never seen 4 people react so fast. As Bernie Sanders was coming close to you, when everyone trying to shake his hand and get autographs and whatnot, they would walk up to you, there'd be a gate, like a fence, and they'd this is in the field house. They'd grab you, frisk you, grab any sharp or any objects off you, which you weren't even allowed to bring in.
Yeah.
So anything you had on you. And then like after he grabbed you, like they put everything back, and it was like so fast. You didn't have time to react. And each one of them had guns on their ankles, guns here, probably more somewhere else.
Right.
Earpiece. They all had nice suits on, but like gym shoes, so they can move.
Yeah.
And it was just so interesting to see. They were so quick, and they were everywhere.
Wow.
Just like 4 guys surrounding him, and then like 20 people just everywhere. And this is like a Democratic candidate. It's not even, a president or anything.
Right.
So I can't imagine what it's like for the actual president. But that was very surreal to go to Argo for that, and waited for like, oh my God, 5 hours down 63rd Street.
Right. Where were you in that line? I remember people talking about how, I was only up to the church, and then some people I was all the way down to
We were past
Nicky's.
We were past Nicky's.
Okay.
But I found a little loophole. Like once we got in, we were like in the middle of the crowd, but then I realized not many people were in the back behind him. So to get close, we weren't that close, but to get close, we just went around the back, and before I knew it, I was 20 feet from him and watching the whole thing, and could have got up on the back behind the stands, like be behind him.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to be that person on TV behind him.
Right.
Just kind of
somebody is going to notice you and talk about you.
Yeah,
and
I didn't want to do that. So I was like, I'll just be off to the side. But it was pretty cool. That was really interesting. I was glad that happened. That was 5 years ago already.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And you remember Donald Trump was supposed to be having his own rally at UIC that same night.
I do remember that,
And he, with the demonstration going on, they hightailed it and left.
Wow, what a nightmare that was, huh?
Wow.
I mean, every president's a nightmare, but it was an extra scary nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm indifferent about most high-end politics, to be honest. It just becomes a game of money and, whose butt are you kissing, but...
Yep.
But no, Trump was rough. That was an interesting situation. I don't know.
I'm glad we're past it.
I'm glad we're past it. I don't even feel like talking about it.
Nah.
I'm like, that's all we talked about forever. It's all everyone complained about. Yeah. I'm glad we're past it. I'm glad. I don't know where we are between the pandemic and the internet and Twitter and all the chaos. I try to stay away from it and be grounded in this reality.
Right.
The more you go around this world and you talk to people, the more you realize we're kind of all on the same page. We don't care about those things. It's a small percentage of people who really do.
Right.
They're just really loud because they're amplified by something we call the internet. Yeah. But it's probably different for someone like you, like being older. I mean, do you pay attention to a lot of these things, or are you just, occupied with your career, family, kids, your hobbies? You just kind of...
I guess I could stand to stop and consider the internet more than I do, and its implications and all of that stuff. I guess I'm just right now admittedly a blind consumer of it, rather than somebody who would study it and try to determine its influence, the extent of its influence. It's obviously a useful tool. And it's good for entertainment, but man, has it, taken its toll, I think, just on people's ability to concentrate. Mm-hmm. And even a thing like this, where, we're just having a nice conversation over here, but I keep hearing this thing buzzing because somebody's either texting me or some kind of thing is going off. Yeah, I have it on silent, but I don't just sit there.
I turn off the buzz
away.
and silent forever, and I receive no information. Miss every phone call. I don't remember the last time I answered a phone call.
Yeah.
Except for when it was deliberate, like call me at 9:30.
Sure.
But other than that, I miss everything. And I'm fine. I don't care. I'm happy to. There's a lot of information coming in, a lot of notifications, and I just don't need them. I have them all turned off on my app, so I don't know. Only when bands message me, like I need to get that notification. But it's been nice.
Yeah, I suppose the internet, if anything, it gives us a sense of urgency and immediacy with whatever we see, whatever we read, whatever we're doing with our phone, right? If assuming that we're just looking at something online, comments have to be made right away on something. People experience whatever and have to either take a photo of it and upload it, or comment on something about it. And it seems like collectively we're just losing that ability to reflect. Just pause and reflect and listen to the silences in between comments or between things. That's one thing that I have to remind myself to do, because like everybody else, I'm as much caught up in social media as the next person, or just internet things, and so that distraction aspect. And that's one of the things I've tried to work on, especially this last pandemic year. I just tried to get a little bit closer to, or a little bit more aware of, time spent away from computer, away from social media, trying to be a bit more reflective. It's an attempt.
Yeah.
So that's, there have been a few good things, I suppose, to come out of this pandemic year.
What else? Anything else you tried new, or with the extra time, anything else you wanted to get done?
Well, a lot of the stuff was kind of funneled into creativity, right? So just produced a lot of art over the last
like
year.
Every day.
Yeah.
Making a lot of artwork.
It's some of it is older stuff, stuff from the last couple of years. But I try to do a little bit of something each day. I've tried to read a little bit more. So there have time spent with the family has been nice. After a while, everybody gets on, everybody's nerves.
Only so much you want to spend.
There's
with
only
anybody.
so much you want to spend with these people. You love them, but you're also potentially going to strangle every single one of them if you have to see them again. So I mean, there have been, I would hope, some good things to come from the pandemic. Now, I mean, would you count this as something that developed as a result of the pandemic?
Yes and no, because I had the plan before it.
Okay.
I wanted this room to be the podcast room in like November of 2019. That's what the plan was. I was waiting for, building it up and trying to figure out how to do it. And then the pandemic happened. I was going to do it like right before that.
Okay.
Then that happened. And I was just like, oh no, like I don't have like the money to fix this up and turn it into it. And I kind of waited. And it's like no one's going to come in. It's a pandemic. So I had to wait until it kind of slowed down in like December. And people were getting vaccinated and it started to be a little bit easier to navigate.
Right.
So not so much that. The pandemic for me was mostly just like internal, personal growth, like so much free time, more free time than I've ever had in my life. And I was like, I got to do something with this free time.
Yeah.
I have to work on myself in order to get through this, health-wise, mentally, emotionally, just got to try something new, go for more walks. I learned a lot from other people who've, you see someone older that's healthier, and I wonder, like, what are they doing? How are they still like that at that age?
Right.
I learned from that.
Yeah.
Try to make sure I could learn from anybody. Good decisions, bad decisions. Just try to not get to the place where I'm making the mistakes, and I could just kind of take away from what they did. And that was like eating better, sleeping better, exercise, being productive, talking to people more, being more honest. Honesty's been a big thing. I've learned more transparent. Not that I wasn't, but sometimes you just catch yourself lying to yourself. Even just being more honest with yourself. Like, you know what? No, don't do that. Or like the little things when you just kind of become a little hyperbolic or a little sarcastic with your statements or your thoughts. It's like, maybe I should be more honest and straightforward. And after a while of doing that, you start to see the repercussions, like in a good way. You start to see things turning out better, people appreciating it more, friendships getting stronger.
Right.
Instead of running away from something, just facing it. And then when you have to face it again later on, it becomes easier because now you know what it feels like. That anxiety is not so powerful.
Right.
Staying off the internet more, like allowing an X amount of time on Instagram. Facebook is pretty much non-existent. And then that's it. I don't have anything else. Got rid of all streaming services. So I don't really watch much anymore. When I do watch something, I want it to be intentional. So if I want to watch a movie, I'm going to pay the $3 to rent it instead of sitting around all day just streaming stuff, justifying it because I paid $14 a month for it.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just did it so much, I realized, what's the point? I don't need to be doing this. And I could, to keep my sanity and feel better, to stay outside more. And everyone feels better when you're outside and you get more sunlight.
Yeah.
Like over time, if you do that every day, even throughout the winter, it feels a lot nicer. Like this winter was not bad for me at all.
Good.
It felt like summer. I felt no difference in it at all just by forcing myself to like walk through snow and blizzards and just kind of face the elements. see the beauty in it, appreciate that that is what leads to this weather. That is what leads to this type of nature and growth, and that cycle is part of what we are, and shouldn't resent it just because you have to go through it. If you do that much, if you truly hate it, you should probably move to a warmer climate.
Right.
You've lived around here your whole life.
Yeah, been here. I grew up in Chicago and went to St. Lawrence High School, and have always worked around here. So I'm part of the Southwest Side. And like I was telling you earlier, when I retire, the plan is to move out to Portland, Oregon.
What a great change.
Yeah, my wife's family lives out there now. And I don't really have any family over here to kind of stay close with or anything.
Were you an only child, or?
Yeah, I was an only child,
okay.
and parents are gone, and that's it. I don't have any ties over here, really.
Yeah.
Family ties. So we're going to go out to Portland, and that's that.
That's amazing.
Love the
Is she
Pacific
retiring
Northwest.
there too?
She works for a company where they're letting her work remotely right now, and she'll be able to do that out at Portland as well. So she'll still work.
Probably a couple more years or something.
Probably a few more years,
Yeah.
right? And I know she would love to retire when I retire, but I think she's still going to have to do a little bit of something, and then I'll just be doing whatever.
Yeah, living the life.
Relaxing, that's about it.
That's amazing. I mean, like I said, you'll probably make a lot of art.
I'm hoping it's a nice diversion, but at least out in Portland you have pretty decent music scene out there, so I'm looking forward to hearing some stuff out there. I love mountains. There aren't enough mountains in Illinois.
There are no mountains, one would say.
So it would be nice to see mountaintops.
And a better marijuana infrastructure.
Yeah, that's true. They have that as well.
Yeah, we're getting there. Not quite figuring out yet in this state for whatever reason. It's probably something political. It always is.
Well, I think when the pandemic hit at the start of 2020, wasn't it in May of 2020 where they were supposed to open up dispensary things? I mean, they were going to open up licensure for dispensaries to anyone, not just places that had previously been selling medical.
I don't know.
See, because I think the places at the start of 2020, when we first went legal, I think the first dispensaries were the ones that had only been dealing with medical marijuana, and now they were they were allowed to be recreational, but it was only them. Yeah. And I think in May of 2020 they were supposed to allow anybody else who wants to sell recreationally, but of course that never happened because of COVID.
Yeah.
So that really hit it at a bad time for that industry.
Didn't help.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a new thing, so in its infancy, it's kind of hard when you get hit with a pandemic to grow and learn and for the government to get the right numbers in to understand where they are doing things right, wrong, pricing. It's tricky. It's tricky because it's supposed to be a good thing, and get rid of people going to jail or prison for unnecessary things, and for people having to not go to the black market anymore. But most people I know still just buy on the streets because it's so expensive to buy from medical marijuana facilities. Maybe not for a lot of people who have good careers, but most people I know, it's more than double the price and half the quantity. So you're like, what are we doing here?
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. Interesting. It just blows my mind because alcohol is just so easy. It's just so straightforward.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harsher on the body.
A lot
harsher. Yeah. Yeah, I try to drink sparingly for reasons, not as much as I used to. Again, another thing I'm learning from the older folks in my life who have told me stories, and they're just like, it's fun, but you got to know. You got to know yourself and know the outcome is not the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I quit drinking 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And I mean, it's like I've still had a shot of tequila now and then because just like when my son turned 21, we shared one. And so I still have little tequila every now and then, but sparingly. I don't. I had my fun. So it's like, that's good.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like I never really went that hard in it. So I hope to enjoy it here and there, for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It was never really a big part of it. It never really had a burden on my health or life.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But I enjoy more like trying like psychedelics once in a while. I think that's the drug of choice for me.
Yeah.
And it's something you don't do all the time, which is nice because it's too much.
Right.
Like drinking, you could drink every day.
Right.
Weed, you could smoke every day. Cigarettes, you can have every day. But like mushrooms, it's like,
Yeah.
I need to take a break from
You
that.
need to take a right. Right. We'll talk about, effects on reality and how.
Yeah, that's what I like about it. It's puts you to places you normally can't go, So it's just interesting. Open up some windows, makes you look at people differently. Maybe more a little empathetic. Yeah, interesting. You doing anything crazy in college or in life with that?
I experimented with LSD and weed, and that's about it.
Yeah.
I kept it pretty simple. I was in college. I was really into like the beat lit scene. Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters. I read the electrocholic acid test, and so that type of stuff was kind of fascinating to me. And so once I got to college, I experimented with some acid. Doing some artwork under the influence, and so it was one of those things that probably has a certain influence in technique or style or whatever. But it's there, it's all there.
Yeah,
all these different experiences that we have are somehow in what we produce.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't really try them until later, but anything I got that might have been more psychedelic was probably from other artists before me that did it, and I learned from them.
Yeah.
Influences by them. Yeah. So what's new, Tim?
I think I'm running out of stuff to say,
You
man.
think so?
I think so.
I mean, we can end whatever you'd like. There's no rules to this. There's no producer looking over us. There's no commercial breaks. There's no sponsors.
Yeah.
We're not beholden to anything. So if we could end whenever you'd like.
Let's go ahead and call it.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
It's always great to talk to you, and I can't wait to start playing chess again.
Sounds good.
I can't wait to have you at DZ Fest, presenting and selling your artwork. You're a magnificent artwork. Would you like to plug where people can find your artwork on
I saw that,
Facebook,
yeah.
Instagram?
Yeah. Oh, do I want? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. There was somebody whose interview you did once upon a time, and I saw some of my stuff in the back, so I thought that was a plug. No, so if you want to see more of this, you can go on Instagram to see and go at Bulb 2021. Bulb like light bulb 2021. And so that's where I've kind of challenged myself to each day post a new piece of art. So whether it's something I'm doing this year or something from the past, every piece is going to be different. But I'm just trying to centralize all of my artwork on one page, and then from there kind of take stock of, over the course of a year, did I produce a series that I want to develop a little bit more? Is there a certain style I did a few pieces with, and now I want to explore that a little bit more? So I'm just trying to make a clearinghouse of my art. So then from there, starting next year, I can kind of figure out what I want to do with it. Delete the whole thing. I don't know. I don't know yet what I want to do.
That's a neat idea, though. That's hard.
Oh my God! I started the whole thing by thinking I'm going to produce a new work each day. So I started. New Year's Day hit, and I had about 7 new pieces that I had done over Christmas break, just little things. And so I figured, that gives me a little leeway. Gives me some breathing room. So then as I was making more pieces and I was posting these, pretty soon I'm about a week ahead of myself. I get through February, I'm like a few days ahead of myself. By the time I hit March, it was like, holy shit, man, I can't sustain this for a whole year. So that's when I started. So I have another main Insta account that I've always had my art on. So gradually I'm kind of migrating all of the art stuff that I'm doing onto the Bulb site. And then I'm just, once I have that all done, I think I'm going to wipe out that main account and just start fresh with stuff, because I'm just tired of looking at what I have on there. So,
That's cool, though. That's a nice concept. I mean, I appreciate the challenge. I wouldn't be able to do that, no way. But hey, you have a high output. Is your house just covered in artwork?
Now it is, yeah, from the last couple of years.
It's amazing, though.
Yeah, we've started to hang up quite a bit of the stuff just to put it somewhere because,
Yeah.
you know.
You should try to sell it, to try to go to different, I don't know, get tents at different, events, I don't know, different music festivals besides DZ Fest.
Yeah. I've been thinking more and more about it. In fact, my wife was telling me that. She's encouraging me to do that. I think she just wants to get rid of some of this shit. There's too much of it around the house. But I like that idea. I just haven't gotten around to researching, what's out there. Are there limits? Because, I feel like when I look at my own artwork and my own output, I feel like my stuff ranges in style, ranges in medium. And that isn't from lack of discipline as an artist, although I suppose somebody could say, well, you don't do this professionally, so you haven't quite mastered whatever it is you need to do. Mm-hmm. But I see so many artists out there who, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong necessarily with this, it just isn't something that I value in art. Artists who do like just variations on the exact same thing all over again. Maybe it's a green background, it has an image that's in black, and the image is very abstract, and in one painting it looks more circular, but the next painting it looks more rectangular, but it's all like basically the same thing. And I see a lot of artists out there producing work like that. And I don't know, in my mind, I just think to myself, there's so many cool things that you could do with these mediums. You could play with acrylic versus art. You could do some really nifty things if you combine pastel with charcoal. My God, the stuff you could do with ink, whether it's wet or dry. There's all kinds of cool things with this. So why wouldn't you just kind of experiment and see what kind of things you could do? Because your moods aren't always the same. Your process isn't always the same. So I kind of like producing what I produce to the degree that I am taking a snapshot of something about myself at this point in my life, some thought, some emotion, whatever. And it just, and I kind of value that in artists rather than artists who only work in one medium and only do these variations on the same thing.
Yeah, that's the type of person you are. Like you, Tim, like you like a lot of different things. Some people want to stick to something that's more familiar, hone in on that, become an expert at that. But I appreciate someone that gets the expression from many different mediums, and you definitely have gotten great at all of them, I think so.
Thank you.
Do you find yourself with changing with age, becoming, growing older in life, do you find where it comes from, that creativity? Does it change? Was it different from when you were 20, 30, 40, 50? I mean, it has for me, from when I would write songs at 20 versus now, or play music at that age to now. It feels so different, But at its core level, it's coming from this place of longing to get something out of you, feeling the need to just express yourself in the moment. But I wonder, like, does it change when you have kids? Does it change when you have a marriage? Does it change when you get older and you see more, destruction and things in life? When you have a better appreciation for human life because you see, as you get older, people die and you start to realize how fleeting it all is.
Yeah. Everything you just said, yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. There are things, as you're producing art. I think when you're younger, I know for myself, I at first valued technique. So I'm taking art classes where they're showing you how a Leonardo da Vinci hand is made, and note the shading of the hand. And so now you want to reproduce that. And so education early on, art education, was learning some of the different techniques, being able to shade spheres in different ways, or cones and all this stuff, right? To be able to produce effect. And so early on, I think I valued myself as somebody who was producing art. I valued perfection and technique, and it was only through not being away from art for as many years as I was, teaching, starting a family, living life, all the way up to about 5 or 6 years ago. now you return to art, and so now you have to kind of reteach yourself some of the things that you remembered being able to do quite well way back when you were in your 20s. And in the process of reteaching yourself this skill, you're actually kind of developing a slightly different style with how you do it, because now your movements are different. Your grip is different. For if you're using, I don't do any digital art, and I know some people are really good at that, but I've never mastered that stuff with computers. So I'm just purely organic, paper, pen, paint, whatever. So it was, it's that initial idea that you have to have perfection. And then when I approach this, I suppose my approach is less about perfection. I mean, what I enjoy about the process for me is getting lost in the details. Depending on the artwork, like in the center one, there's a lot of detail to her shirt, the shading. There's kind of a Robert Crumb fixation that I've always had, with the detail-y aspect. Salvador Dali.
Mm-hmm. You're a very detailed artist.
What I like about that process is there's like a certain numbing effect. You get so caught up in the little lines and the time that elapses, and right, you were talking earlier about you lose a sense of time when doing certain tasks and stuff. And you kind of lose yourself in that whole creative process, and so that for me is just kind of a fun offshoot of creativity is experiencing that momentary loss of time.
Therapeutic,
mindful. Very, very mindful and therapeutic, yeah.
It might be the only time in life where you kind of cease to exist while you still are there.
Yeah, I suppose in sleep we are too. We just can't really appreciate it.
Yeah. Maybe that's why it feels great, because you kind of get your brain to that place where it is when it's in a REM sleep or something, Yeah, I get that. It happens you probably experience this with music. But it really happens when it's an original song that you made up with, your friends, and there's a moment where it all comes together.
Yeah.
And, the kick drum is hitting perfectly with the downbeat, and the bass is following it just right, and the melody of the guitars are coming
Everybody's
in.
reading each other's cues.
Everyone looks at each other, and then everyone, people are closing their eyes, and you're just locked in, and you feel like you're the only thing on the world, in this world, and the only thing that matters is that feeling, and I don't know, you kind of disappear. It happens with music. It happens when you listen to music, too.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. And it happens when you go look at a piece of artwork, and I'm sure it happens even more when you're making it. Yeah. Well, Tim, keep making art. You're really, really talented, and I've always admired it, and I think it's great that you still do it. A lot of people get older, they get cynical, they stop trying. I think it's great that you do it. I think you're fantastic. I hope that you keep working on stuff and can sell pieces or stack them up around your house.
Yeah, stack them up around the house out in Oregon.
Do you ever have any in your classroom? Any artwork in your classroom?
I had Mark bought my ink portrait of Edgar Allan Poe. I had that up in my classroom, and I posted a picture of it, I think, last year. And he asked me if it was for sale, and anything I make is for sale. I'm not going to hang on to anything really. And what am I going to do with it? So I sold it to him, and that was really the only original art of mine that's in my classroom. But I have a couple of pictures. I mean, I have a Dante, Charles Dickens. I think I have James Joyce, John Milton. So I have some stuff up in my classroom.
Cool. I wish you were my English teacher.
Wish you had been my student. It would be interesting to see what young Ben really was like, and be able to.
There's a few faculty at our we could probably ask that question too.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, thank you so much, man.
Yeah,
this was fun.
This was great. It's been an honor to know you for years, and
likewise,
I appreciate your friendship and your abilities, and you've always just been a big advocate for everything I do, and I am one for you too. So thank you. And,
thank you.
I'll be talking to you soon, Tim.
All right. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.